Special broadcast of CNN News 18. Prime Minister Narendra Modi left for Israel this morning, embarking on his two-day state visit at the invitation of his friend, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, this visit is aimed at further strengthening the rapidly expanding India-Israel strategic partnership, with discussions expected to focus on defense, innovation, agriculture, water management, trade and investment. But remember, both countries are also key allies. There are regional and global developments that certainly will be discussed. In a historic first, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is set to address the Knesset, underlining the deep democratic ties between the two countries as well. And we're bringing you a special broadcast here in collaboration with ILTV in Israel for deeper insight into how this visit is being viewed in Israel and what really does it have in store for both sides. I'm joined in this special broadcast by Caleb Ben David, anchor ILTV. He's joining us live from Tel Aviv. So let's begin, Caleb, by just discussing the kind of mood that persists in Israel ahead of this visit. All the right notes, all the right noises have been made in public, but this is a very key visit given its timing, depending vis-a-vis the global scenario.
Good morning from Israel, Shivani. Namaste. Absolutely. Look at the timing here. It's really quite amazing. First of all, keep in mind this visit by Prime Minister Modi. He is the first, other than President Trump, he is the first significant world leader of a world power to visit Israel since the end of the Gaza war. So that is very important. And also, he's coming at a time when really any day now, we're expecting the possibility of a U.S. strike against Iran and possibly an Iranian counterstrike against Israel. That it's seen as something that could happen any day. This visit could have been delayed or canceled, but it is seen as so significant, as you said right now, that the decision obviously was made that it should go ahead despite all the tensions that are now in the region.
So tell me something. In Israel, how is Israel and the Israeli government looking at India, or what is it looking from India when it comes to these, West Asia tensions, particularly with Iran? What is it that could be discussed, and what is the role that India could play?
Right. So I think this visit, there are basically three main categories here, three pillars of this visit: the diplomatic, the economic, and security. Certainly strengthening the diplomatic ties between Israel and India, increasing the bilateral relations with them, both between the countries, but in the context of a broader alliance. Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke about this early this week, that he sees Israel and India as the cornerstone of a broader alliance that will pull in other countries in Asia and East Asia, Middle Eastern countries, even African states, standing together perhaps against, for example, the battle against radical Islam and radical Islamist terrorism. Also, keep in mind, we see this emerging alliance, for example, between Turkey, which has a very antagonistic relation with Israel, and Pakistan. And this is a sort of Sunni Muslim alliance that concerns Israel, should concern India for sure. And the Israel-India relationship can be a sort of counterbalance against it. That's the diplomatic. We can go into more details on that. Economic, definitely to boost trade. It's about $4 billion a year, the trade. But definitely it wants Israel and India want to increase that. They've just started this week talks for a free trade agreement, which would be hugely significant. And a special focus on high tech, especially areas like AI and quantum computing, which both Israel and India are leaders in. That's hugely important. We can go into details of that. And finally, security cooperation, especially in the field of air defense. And this has been of course hugely significant for Israel and also certainly for India. We saw how important that was in the conflict with Pakistan, Operation Sindoor last May. So that is going to be maybe even the key issue that the leaders will discuss.
Yes, I mean, it is a changing global order in which India has growing heft as all world leaders and, global democracies confess. And this is why this visit is being watched so importantly. But, I will come back to you. Just stay with me. I also want to just introduce some of our other guests who are joining us, some of them from Israel and our domestic guests as well. Lev Aaron is senior journalist, is joining us. Yossi Kuperwasser is Israeli intelligence and security expert. Deepak Vora, former Indian diplomat, also with us. And of course, Ben David will continue with us. So I want to begin with Yossi Kuperwasser first, because we're talking about a very, very critical time in global diplomacy. We're seeing all the warning signs coming in as far as an impending strike against Iran is concerned. With, the Israeli Prime Minister talked about a hexagonal alliance in which India, Israel both will play a key role. How do you look at this? Exactly what are the key alliances needed as we move forward?
Thank you for having me.
My friend, I have limited
alliance
time,
between
so
Israel
I
and
would
India
go down. I see you have many
something extremely
panelists.
important for Israeli architecture of the Middle East and the region beyond the Middle East. And I think that in this respect, even though our focus today is, of course, on Iran and the potential for an escalation with Iran due to the difficulty to reach an agreement between the United States and Tehran, we still attribute a lot of importance to this visit, because we believe that this is going to help us structure new alliances between us and the neighbors that we have here, and especially with India playing a major role. And we are looking forward to the establishment of the IMEC corridor and other elements that would make this from a wish into reality. And that's what we are looking for. And I would say in this respect, the timing is extremely interesting, because it's proof of the special relations. You know, we raised the level of the relationships with Turkey, with India to a new stage. And the fact that we have at this specific time, when everybody here is bracing for some sort of a flare-up between the United States and Iran, it's extremely important that we have this visit. We trust, I think, this sort of intimacy between Israel and India that goes beyond the issues of security and technology and all the other economic relationships. These are all extremely important, but it's beyond that. It's the feeling that we have a friend.
Yeah.
And Israel is really respect and are seeking for such friendships, and this is the friendship we get from India.
Right. I mean, maybe Yossi could talk a little more about specifically Prime Minister Netanyahu seeing Israel and India as the cornerstone of this regional, or even beyond the regional, alliance against radical Islam. He even talked about bringing in African states, other Middle Eastern countries, and Israel and India really being the sort of cornerstone of that alliance.
Yes, Israel and India are the cornerstone of this alliance, but of course there's a role there for the Greek and the Cypriots. There's a role for African countries, there's Morocco and the Somaliland that we have now established new relationship with. But many others, Tanzania and Uganda and others that cooperate with Israel very closely. There is room for the former Soviet Union republics like Kazakhstan that just joined the Abraham Accords, and of course for the Arab members of this alliance, who are mainly the UAE and the Arab Emirates and Bahrain. And we hope that this is going to catch more participants. We sincerely hope that we shall see Saudi Arabia at one point join in. And who knows, maybe there is going to be a change in the regime in Iran, and we shall see Iran joining in. That would be a dream come true. That's definitely going to form a new Middle East, a new architecture. And we have to remember what happened ever since October 7th. We are still on the 7th of October trauma. But what happened after 7th of October was a real change in the structure of the Middle East. The evil axis of evil led by Iran was sort of collapsing. Let's say it is not yet collapsed, but it is collapsing, lost much of its power. And this enables those who seek stability and security to have more influence on how the Middle East looks like and operates. And India, of course, is a partner for such a direction of the Middle East, and is going to gain a lot by cooperating with Israel and the other members of this axis.
Yeah. No, interesting how you put it. You're talking about a revamped Middle East. What role will India play in this? I think Deepak Vora will have a few comments on that because we're talking about also a country here, Iran, where India has very deep ties and historic ties with. And whatever happens in Iran has huge consequences back home for India as well. And there is an entire domestic audience here as well. And already some of it is playing out. But, I do want to go across to Lev Aaron as well, the senior journalist from Israel joining us. I want to understand from you, Lev, what are the sentiments in Israel about an impending conflict with Iran, US, Israel on one side, Iran on the other? Does the public welcome this? Do they have the appetite for this? We are hearing voices in US that may not, be fully in agreement because this has potentials to destabilize the region. We don't know how long it takes before things settle down. So what are the sentiments on ground as far as the public is concerned?
Okay, let's start with Modi. First of all, Modi is the most popular Asian leader in Israel. Everybody knows Modi. And Israel also knows that as far as Iran is concerned, Israel and India is not exactly on the same page. Of course, in Israel, there is big appetite to solve the Iranian problem, and we all hope that right after Modi goes back to India, we will see some kind of solution in Iran. But Netanyahu was very smart in the hexagon idea, that he understood that even if Iran problem is solved, still we have Pakistan, still we have Turkey. And if we don't have a big grand alliance of, let's say, moderate Muslim countries and India, Israel, Greece, Cyprus, and so on, solving the Iranian problem will not solve all the problems.
Yeah. Kalev, your thoughts on this? Yes?
Yes, well, first of all, I just want to say that in terms of, it's understandable that India sees Iran as a counterbalance to Pakistan. I mean, that is their common interest. They share a common antagonist. But I think one of the things that Prime Minister Netanyahu is going to propose to Prime Minister Modi is that this emerging alliance between Israel and India and some other states can serve as an effective balance also against Pakistan. You don't necessarily need this Iranian regime. And as Yossi Kupovasa said, we may see some changes in Iran. I do want to ask your expert from India how the attitude in the attitude there about Prime Minister Modi's visit to Israel. He is other than President Trump, he is the first sort of major world leader of a world power to come to visit Israel at this time. How is that being seen there?
Well, thank you very much. I have to leave in a few minutes, ma'am, with your gracious permission. First of all, may I begin by saying Shalom to all our guests from Israel. Pitzachon leIsrael, victory to you. You have done extremely well. One of the countries I fell in love with the first time I went there. Let me very quickly tell you a little bit of historical context. I had met in a delegation the Iron Lady, your Iron Lady, Golda Meir, when she was no longer Prime Minister. And I told her that the delegation said we've been wanting to establish relations with Israel. She said, we were waiting, but you never came. It was a very significant comment that she made. The second time was in 9/11, when I was posted in Spain at that time. My Israeli counterpart said to me, he said, forget about the rest of the world. India and Israel will have to use the broad broom against this terrorist business. Together we will have to do it. It's a very significant comment that he made. Forget about all the others. They'll make noise. They won't be able to do anything, but we will be able to do it. Ma'am, may I just put it to you like this, that I don't know if I'm sure my Israeli friends have heard of her ethnomusicologist called Johanna Spector. I recommend that you read her book, The Jews in India. And I'd read it, I'd met her, in which she has said, we've been persecuted across the world, everywhere, except in India, where we found refuge. So in the minds of every Israeli, there is this feeling that India is a second home. And in the minds of every Indian, there is the feeling that Israel stands by us. We can trust them. It's not the feeling that we have about other countries. And may I just put it to you very bluntly, sir. We trust Israel because you've never let us down. Defense is only one aspect. I do recall a thing called, since we have some farmland, I do recall that we were one of the first to get into what is called drip irrigation. Saved us 50% of our water, improved our yield by 200%. And it came from Israel, all that equipment. And then in space, and then in deep ocean exploration, in medicine, we collaborate very, very closely. Defense is a significant part of them, perhaps the most significant. But other than this, Israel is always present. How do I say it's present, sir? You were not there officially at the Artificial Intelligence Impact Summit in the nation's capital in New Delhi a few days ago, but Israel was everywhere. Your private sector was there everywhere. I met some of them. You are the startup nation, and we have 150 startups every day. The synergy is unlimited. And so many of my Israeli colleagues who were there, whom I met at this summit, they said, we've come here to invest in Indian startups in several sectors. So, sir, don't ever let us down. I promise we will never let you down.
But Deepak Vora, your thoughts on the tricky balance that India has to maintain as far as this Iranian question is concerned? What are we going to do about this? Yes, we are friends with Israel, and of course, we don't want to let go of this friendship at all. This is the friendship for the future. But this is a very tricky question for us.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Those who want to make it tricky will make it tricky. Let me put it to you like this. You've heard of my grandfather's 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 grandfather called Chanakya, the greatest strategist in the world. What did he say? My enemy's enemy is my friend. He didn't say that my friend's enemy has to be my enemy. If Israel has an issue with Iran, it doesn't mean that Iran also becomes my enemy. If Iran has an issue with Israel, it doesn't mean that Israel also becomes my enemy. However, what has Iran done for me, ma'am? Let me put it to you very bluntly, all right? Let this go on record. 65, there used to be a terrible character called the Shah, although he was much beloved of Israel and there were direct flights between Tel Aviv and Tehran. He sent his aircraft to help Pakistan. 71, ditto. Of course, the war ended by the time he came. And then this character, some Khamenei fellow, after the Kargil thing, he talks about how Kashmir is a hotspot, etc. Who the hell are you? Why do you open your mouth on areas that you know nothing about? My own feeling is, whatever we might say, we love the Iranian great guys, etc., etc. You remember a character called Nadir Shah in our history. That's in our collective memory. You're too young, ma'am, to remember. I'm almost 75 with 52 years in diplomacy. I remember the invasions that came across from that side. It's part of our history. So yes, we love Iran very much, but I'd like to cover this love with, as the Russian proverb goes, dovarai ni provarai, which means, yes, trust, but verify very carefully. With Israel, we can trust because they've proved it, ma'am. What more do I want? I mean, in 99, when the Americans refused to give us GPS coordinates of the attacking scoundrels from across the border, Israel came to our rescue. They even helped us with retrofitment in some of the aircraft. So why should I have an issue with a country that has stood solidly by us? And you should not have an issue with a country like India that supports you all the way.
Yeah. You know, we will, of course, look into some of the domestic blowback that is already beginning, at least even if it's political commentary and not so much on ground. But Amichai Stein, journalist, is also joining us from Israel. Thanks a lot for your time. Amichai, hi. How are you looking at this Modi visit to Israel? As our friend Khalif from ILTV has pointed out, he's, after Trump, the first or the only other big global leader to visit Israel at a very critical time in global security matters, and also he's very popular there. So what is this visit's big message according to you?
So this is a very significant message because what essentially Prime Minister Modi says is, you know, I have my conflicts sometimes with Israel and sometimes it's criticized and sometimes we don't vote in the UN the way they want and regarding the Palestinian issue. But Prime Minister Modi is saying Israel is not a pariah. Israel is not a rogue state. Israel has been a country who has been fighting for her life in the last 2 years against terror. And this is a very important message to what we're seeing around the world when it comes to Israel, because you see criticism to Israel, but the criticism is, at the end, in some countries, that's all. Modi is saying, I can sometimes criticize, but I'm a friend, and I see my friend that fought for 2 years against terrorism, and during these 2 years, India has been a real good friend to Israel. And he's saying, I can come to do business, I can speak with them, I can talk, I can go to the Knesset, and even speak the first time an India Prime Minister is coming to the Knesset. So this is a very important message regarding, you know, the global view regarding Israel, saying Israel, yes, we can criticize you, but I think you're fighting against terrorism, and that's why I am coming, because I am a friend, and I think we can do great business. And I think this visit is not only significant regarding Israel-India one-on-one relations, it's regional effect of India. Because if you put in India, and we know the IMEC project, and we know the I2U2 with the UAE and the US, this is, you know, much more than Israel-India relations. It's much more regional issues that is putting India inside the Middle East as the real global and important power.
Yeah, I want to just ask Yossi, because we mentioned security being a key element here, especially air defense. Of course, Israel and India already cooperate to some degree, and of course, Israel has sold to India the items like the Falcon and the Heron drone. But I think there's an ambition here for Israel and India to really become partners in developing air defense. That already began with the Barak 8 anti-missile defense system. Let me ask you, Yossi, how far can this go? How far can this partnership develop, especially in what's become such a critical element, certainly for Israel and now for India, especially its as regards its conflict with some of its neighbors?
Well, first of all, let me just make a comment about Pakistan. We have to remember that A.Q. Khan was the person who gave the Iranians the know-how that enabled them to enrich uranium. So that is something very important. When you look at the relationship between India and Iran, we have to remember that. But coming back to your question, Kalev, I think we're just at the beginning. We can go much farther, because it goes along with the new policy that we have of diversifying the areas where we produce and where we bring our weapons from. And it goes along with the idea of the Indians of make in India. So, and we want them to make it in India. And we can go to further areas beyond what has been accomplished so far. And this new stature of the India in Israel would allow us to trust the Iranian industry, military industry, more than we did in the past, and to share more information and more capabilities of production. And I think we are just at the beginning of what can be accomplished. And we are facing both the same kind of threats. So definitely there's a fit between what we want to see produced in the military industry and what the Indians want to see produced. And this is the future is ahead of us for much more cooperation.
You know, Kalev, in India, especially post October 7, we saw exactly the kind of projectiles and rockets that were being fired into Israel and how the Iron Dome functioned. Maybe, something of that could work in India as well. India has been, of course, developing its own indigenous technology as well and air defense systems. But this is one area where the two countries can really participate together.
Right, and
Yes.
I just want to, let me just say what the two things can really contribute. Israel is, of course, innovation and its technology in research and development unparalleled in this field. But what it doesn't have is scale. India has the scale, has this massive industrial manufacturing base, also has access to markets that Israel does not have access. So I think there can be something there to work on. I want to ask Amichai, because I think one point that should be talked about a little is the personal. Of course, the countries have their interests, their joint interests, but there is something special to that personal relationship, Amichai, between Modi and Benjamin Netanyahu. I'd almost say, would you agree that perhaps it's the closest personal relationship he has now with the world leader? I mean, of course, President Trump is of higher, perhaps, priority, but in terms of just how they get along, there's something special there with Modi and Bibi.
Definitely, there's something special. First of all, you have to give Prime Minister Netanyahu the full credit. Back in 2014, when Modi became Prime Minister, to pinpoint that there's a chance here to change the track that India-Israel relations have been going since 1947. So you have to give Netanyahu full credit. And Netanyahu, by the way, has this ability, he has an amazing ability to pinpoint, leaders, sometimes even before they become leaders of their own country, and say, these are people who can change their country's relation with Israel. And in Prime Minister Modi's story, it's exactly what happened. And that would lead to the historic visit in 2017 of Prime Minister Modi in Israel, the first time an Indian Prime Minister has visited the country. So you have to give Netanyahu full credit for the ability to pinpoint that, Modi is the person who can change his relations. But they do have a very close relationship. At the end, it's a different relationship when one that he has with President Trump, because the Israel-U.S. relations is in a much more different way. But here there's close relations. And again, I think in the last 2 years, Prime Minister Modi has proven he's a real friend of the state of Israel. And that's what, probably led to the visit now, the most senior leader that is coming to Israel since the end of the war in Gaza. So yes, Prime Minister Netanyahu and Prime Minister Modi have very good relations, very close relations. We see a lot of phone calls between the two. Again, these are different relations than what we see from the U.S., but I think you have to give these two guys full credit, Prime Minister Modi and Netanyahu, again, for being able to change the track of the Indian-Israel relations, to bring them to the place they are now. And like I said before, it's not only India-Israel relations as India-Israel relations, it's India-Israel relations, but to the whole region, the cooperation between also other Arab countries, which is much more significant than what we're seeing now.
Right, and I think we're going to see it's now just a couple of hours. We expect that Prime Minister Modi will land at Ben Gurion Airport, be greeted there by the Prime Minister, and Shivani, I really think we're going to see that personal warmth between them on full display there. Even right on their first, they're going to have their first meeting there at Ben Gurion Airport.
Before we slip into a break, Kalev, I do want to ask you, in terms of that personal connect. We've seen a red carpet being rolled out for Prime Minister Modi in his last visit, which was the first by an Indian Prime Minister. This is his second, and that speech at the Knesset, which will be a landmark speech as well. Anything specific you're looking forward to in terms of reading that connect? What could be those special ways in which the Prime Minister of Israel, the First Lady, etc., go that extra mile or show that extra special attention to the Prime Ministers today?
Well, I'm going to tell you one iconic moment from that previous visit that Amichai said is that the two leaders went to the beach here in Tel Aviv, even got a little in the surf. I mean, where do you see that? I mean, I've never... where do you see two leaders like that go to the beach together and have just in this sort of intimate conversation? I mean, that moment has become kind of iconic in diplomacy here, and I'm curious if we're going to see. It's a little. The schedule is very packed. He's going to be going later to Jerusalem, to the hotel here, to take part in that AI Innovation Center. He's going to meet other leaders. We should mention he's going to meet President Herzog as well, planning to go to Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Memorial. But I'm looking for something maybe a little off script, like that iconic moment we saw between them at the beach last time.
Yes, off script is the right term because I think both the Israeli Prime Minister and the Indian Prime Minister are known for unscripted moments, and together we can expect a few today. I do thank Kalev and others for joining us. We slip into a very short break, but for the best coverage of the Prime Minister's visit to Israel, stay with us. We'll be right back.
Prime Minister Modi's expected visit to Israel is certain to boost defense ties between the two countries dramatically, following on from the almost $9 billion import of sophisticated Israeli weapon systems such as the Spice 1000, Rampage, others in the pipeline, and yet more to follow. And all this now to be stepped up beyond supply and assembly to innovation, engineering and production together. It's all hit an explosive flashpoint now between Iran and the US that threatens to engulf, well, the Gulf and beyond. It will have reverberations around the world, economically, politically, militarily too. And at the heart of it all is Israel right here. Join me in Tel Aviv on CNN News 18. We'll track together these dramatic developments as they unfold.